Now, nothing in life is free, but can you be financially free? And the answer is
Sometimes when people earn more, they're further away from financial freedom than perhaps they expected.
no matter what kind of wage you're on or what situation of life you're in, I want to talk about the 5 financial habits.
Financial freedom means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and the assumption is that you need to have a lot of money to be financially free, and that's just simply not true.
Having a budget, I think, is the foundation of...
And if you're not able to manage properly, then that problem you've got is going to be exponentially more difficult to fix.
When you don't overextend yourself, if you take on too much debt, too much stress, all it does is, do you really need a bigger house? Probably not.
Your focus is really simple. Do you focus on that which you have or that which you don't have?
Get the debt paid down, because as soon as that's paid off, you have escaped the matrix.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. We're looking at 5 steps to financial freedom. Firstly, what is financial freedom? Means an awful lot of things to an awful lot of people. It doesn't mean being a multimillionaire. It can be at any level. 2 of the key steps, the starting one, is being able to budget and spend less than you earn, as it always is with finance. The last one is being able to retire and retire without debt. The key thing is, what are the steps that sit in between? And that's exactly what Mitch and I are going to cover in the podcast. As always, make sure you take plenty of notes, but most importantly, make sure you take plenty of action. See you in the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, here he is, Mitchell Olarenshaw.
I'm here, Mr. B. Thank you very much. Now, nothing in life is free, my father always told me, but can you be financially free? And the answer is yes. No matter what kind of wage you're on or what situation of life you're in, I want to talk about, and make this one really fun, the 5 financial habits of financially free people.
Yeah, look, this will be a bit of fun. And I guess as a starting point, financial freedom means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the assumption is that you need to have a lot of money to be financially free. And that's just simply not true. You could be financially free at any income level, depending on, of course, ticking a few boxes and how you choose to view the circumstance that you're living in. And in fact, sometimes when people earn more, they're further away from financial freedom than perhaps they expected.
What do they say? More money, more problems, right? I think sometimes the richest people, quote unquote, often have the most amount of obligations and stress. And at that point, it's just not worth it.
No. Well, if I take my father as an example, mum and dad, my mum worked was a cleaner, my dad worked in a car factory, and then he did every amount of overtime possible, building site, farm, fixing cars, whatever, to get his mortgage paid off or our mortgage paid off in something like 7 years. And then he said, I'm financially free, nobody owns me. And he's never been a high income earner, but from that point on in his life, nobody owned him. He could do his own thing.
The matrix was finished.
Yeah. So it's interesting the perspective you can have.
All right, well, let's get stuck in, shall we? So
let's get stuck in.
Let's get stuck in. Habit number 1, spend less than you earn. This is an obvious one, but having a budget, I think, is the foundation of anything.
Yeah. The budgeting, you can't go past it. It's foundation of the book, it's foundation of everything that we do. You have to spend less than you earn. You have to have a cash surplus, because if you don't have a cash surplus, you can't start investing. If you can't start investing, you don't build assets. If you don't build assets, you don't get to buy your time back. It's as simple as that.
Yep. We did an episode on this a couple of weeks ago, you might remember, was how to budget the average Aussie salary. So we worked on sort of that $60,000 to $80,000 of income. That's a really good one to listen to if you're in that camp. And I think it remains true whichever camp you're in. If you earn 60 grand, 600 grand, or 6 million a year, you can find a way to spend it all if you really tried hard enough, right?
Yeah, and look, there'll be people that laugh when you, 6 mil. Well, firstly, it's 6 mil, 47.5% of what you earn has gone in tax. Anything you put in super, it's hit with a division 293, so you're paying extra money tax-wise on what you put into your super.
You've encompassed this problem, I can tell by the sound.
And so all that glistens isn't gold.
Okay.
And then there's an expectation that, okay, well, if you earn that, you're the one that shouts dinner all the time, or you're the one that needs to have a certain type of car, lifestyle inflation, which I know we'll get into. So, it is an important thing. It does. Anyway, we'll get to that, I'm sure. So there are 3 buckets that we've talked of previously too. So liquidity being the first one, which is making sure you can pay your bills. You've got an emergency fund, 1 month and then 3 months.
Yep.
That's starts at the most basic level of this, and the only way to be able to get that box ticked, and it is a box being ticked because financial success is a series of check boxes, follow each of those steps and you will get to the promised land. Spending less than you earn, key, because it's going to enable you to create a budget surplus, which means you've got an emergency fund, which means if something goes wrong, you can cover all your bills plus a little bit of color till you get back on your feet. Simple as that.
It's reasonable to me, and that lifestyle can be whatever it needs to be at whatever level you're at in terms of income.
And again, we're going on holiday, so set up a separate savings account, just like when you're a kid, you've got a piggy bank, and I appreciate that probably sounds a little condescending, but set up a separate special purpose vehicle savings account, which could be for the bathroom renovation or going on holiday or whatever it might be. Do not use the credit card and then pay it off over the next period of time. Use a credit card to pay for it, but pay it off immediately when the bill falls due from that special purpose savings account. And if you can't save the money, and then harsh as it may sound, you probably shouldn't be taking that holiday.
Yeah. I'm going to make a really crazily bold statement here, AB, and it's quite controversial, but let me explain it in a moment's time. I think I was more free, let's say, when I was broke. And the reason I say that is because when you don't overextend yourself, and I think my situation now, properties, investments.
I'm really looking forward to listening to where you touch this down. This could be the weave.
Yeah. Don't worry. So right now, properties, investment portfolio, dependents being my partner, as you say, the obligation to shout dinner for everyone and all that kind of stuff that comes with any kind of level of success. Those obligations all create stress, and they all create an ability for you to be tied down to something or to someone or to somewhere. When almost you are in a situation where you don't have anything, you are free by default because you don't have any obligations. So I think what's important for people to understand is don't overextend yourself trying to get through the stages of wealth. We talk about building liquidity, building growth, and having real assets. But if you take on too much debt, too much stress, all it does is create way too much for you to handle.
Look, I'm listening to you and I'm sort of thinking at the same time, I know I should be exclusively listening to you, but I'm going, there's a certain shred of truth to that. There's a bit of wisdom for a young fellow there, I'll give you that.
Thank you.
Take that.
Not that young anymore.
If I sort of think back to my time at, say, uni, for example, where none of us had a pot to pee in, and you're probably your happiest time.
Yeah.
And I think your budget is non-existent. I mean, we really were doing it quite tough. And yeah, you look at it and the pressures of life are quite different. And that's worth acknowledging. And I guess, as you say, the pace from which there are growing your wealth, you can go, I'm just going to go really hard and go really quickly, or you can go in a really systemic way. And if it's like anything, if you kind of force it, so if you're driving your car and you're redlining it, you're probably going to spin off the road and have a nasty accident. If you take it steady, you're probably going to get there. But sometimes we're quite impatient in that desire to get to that next level. And you're quite right. People often overgear in an attempt to kind of fast track their way through. And if you've overgeared and you haven't built the muscle memory of what investing is, or some of the core foundational habits that sit behind it, and you've kind of jumped ahead 5 steps, you're running before you can walk or crawl, that's where problems can really come in. And there's a level of anxiety and stress that most certainly come with that. So you've got to kind of grow into it. At the same time, you can't sort of sit there pondering for too long either. You kind of do need to get started. So I guess it's getting that balance right. Hopefully this podcast will share some wisdom on that.
I can think of one particular person, I obviously won't name who they are, someone who makes a really, really good income, who unfortunately spends a lot of their time over obsessing about how to optimize that money, how to overclub it, get the best rate of return, pay the least amount of tax. And quite frankly, it ends up going the opposite direction. So I think stress less. We're too blessed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a first world problem being able to come up for air financially, but it starts from the good conduct habit. It's your reward. Budgeting, no one likes the idea of, because it sounds like you're crimping the quality of life you have. Budgeting, if you look at it through a different lens, is all about making sure that through some short-term sacrifice today, you can have virtually anything you want tomorrow. It's as simple as that. And it's really, really important to do that. You have to get that step right, because if you can't get that step right at the most basic level, where maybe you've got a wage coming in the door and some rent or a utility bill to pay, down the line, as your investment structures become more sophisticated, and if you're not able to manage budgets properly, then that problem you've got is going to be exponentially more difficult to fix.
That's it. Now, number 2, we've kind of already touched on this, but maybe we can finalize it, is making sure once you've got a budget in place that you've saved and that you've invested with the intention of growing your wealth, if that's what you're into. So,
getting that money working hard for you and watching the cash balance tick up on your account, particularly if it's a savings account, once you've got your emergency fund covered and plus if you've got a special purpose vehicle there, you've got to get that money working harder, because you can't save your way to wealth. Irrespective of what interest rates are, you can't save your way to wealth, because if interest rates are higher, so too is the cost of living. So net, you're no better off. So that then opens the door to, well, what am I going to do with this spare cash that I have? And you could chop it off your mortgage if you have a mortgage. You could start to accumulate a deposit for an investment property, 20% requirement, of course. That's a fairly steep Everest to climb for most people. Or probably one of the lower friction pathways you can take is actually more active investing into either the stock market, or for some people that might look like crypto. Don't go and buy a managed fund. 81% of them underperform the market. Ouch. Just get yourself an index tracker. It's going to save you plenty in fees and also give you a better chance of performance. And there's no real minimum either for there, so you can every month add a little bit more to that and start to accumulate. Or maybe after 5 months or 6 months you might find a different type of market to invest into to give you some diversification, but you're starting the wheels turning, and most importantly, you're not putting the fire out, which is managing that budget at the lowest level, which is very, very important.
Very nice. Number 3, change of pace, avoiding lifestyle inflation. This is a big one. My father always taught me a lot about this. The more you have, all of a sudden, the more you want. But if you can be happy with what you've got, you'll always be ahead.
Yep. Gee whiz, should get the psychologist couch out for this one.
Well, I think then this is something we've probably, if we can just get raw and honest here, we've probably both struggled with. We've both had nothing and we've both had something, you to a larger degree than me, obviously. But we think every time we get something, we kind of are already thinking about the next thing. So you never quite arrive anywhere.
But we just had a management meeting this morning, which was
Same
exactly
problem,
that.
right?
And it's right next. And so that inability to stop and smell the roses, which is something my mother always used to say to me, make sure you stop and smell the roses. And there's so much truth to that. And it's something I'm very bad at personally. That's just my personality type. I'm an achievement-driven person. And so it's about the next thing. And sometimes that can mean that successes really are quite hollow. And if your motivation is maybe not as dyed in the wool, that lack of getting up to the top of the hill and appreciating it, you go, well, what's the point of going up the next one? If that's your personality type, you need to have some level of fuel in the tank. So lifestyle inflation is one of those things that is certainly a real pothole in that road, where you feel that, okay, I've achieved this, I'm going to get that, and then I'm going to feel good. And you don't. Or you do for all of about 30 seconds.
Yes, that's right.
And then it's on to the next thing. And so I guess, anecdotally, if there is a void in your soul of happiness, this might be me I'm talking about here hypothetically.
No, let's hear it. Come on.
It doesn't matter what you spend, you can't fill that.
That's right.
There's nothing you can buy that will fill that hole. Happiness comes from within, and recognizing your achievements of what you've achieved can come within. You don't need baubles and bits and pieces to do that. And that's a real juxtaposition, because I'm, in my mind, quite a frugal person. At the same time, I'm particularly extravagant on certain things that I buy, wine, watches, cars, those sorts of things, because they happen to be.
I can't help but laugh. I'm sorry,
but I'm still frugal. You know this. I'm penny wise.
It depends on what it is, right? You've got your thing and you don't.
And so that I guess, as I say, I should have the psychologist couch out for this one. But the reality is, it's so easy for lifestyle inflation to come along, because you're earning X. You should be, in your own mind, or indeed the mind of other people around you, which can push you down that pathway, you should be spending more on these types of things. So when you weigh that up then against, the marginal utility in your life. So, we've got a house in Italy, we're going there, and there are a number of ways I could go there. I could fly economy, I could fly business, I could fly first, I can go on a private jet. I'm still going to get there at the same time. I'm still going to have the same experience there. One is massively skewed to an ego rub and going, wow, you did this, which will feel good for all of about 5 minutes and probably look pretty good on Instagram. Or you could scale it back and go, okay, what is the actual marginal benefit of dropping that or that to get there?
Purely comfort.
Answers on a postcard. 109 grand, just paid the airfare on Friday.
Ouch.
So, but that's not me. That's me and my family.
Yeah.
And so, could I do that in a different way? Yeah, I could. I'm not going to sit at the back of the plane. I work too hard for that. I'm too big. I've got no interest in doing that. So my reward is to sit where I sit. And at the moment, my kids get a free ride and they get to experience that too, because we're going on holiday together and we want to be together. But that is lifestyle inflation to the nth degree. And I guess, I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal. I'm in a fortunate position where I can accommodate that. It's not a problem. But if it was at the expense of maybe getting a mortgage paid off or having credit card debt sitting somewhere or a deficiency in other elements of my investment plan, then it would become a problem. But I've taken the time to get those things attended to over time. So now I guess I can do that without it being let's create a subcategory here, punitive lifestyle inflation.
Yep. I think,
and you know exactly what I'm talking about, because
100%.
I know you wouldn't spend Christmas either, but I've noticed you've taken the shackles off a little bit, not crazy, but a little bit, and you're enjoying the fruits of your labor because you've taken the time to systemically over the last 8 years tick those boxes on the checklist to get yourself to a position where you can do that.
Yep. I think for me, it was every time I reached a certain peak in the mountain that I'd set for myself, there was something there that I could potentially change for the better of myself. But as you say, probably relaxed a little bit in the last couple of years. I think if I look at this big picture, what you drive, where you live, and where you send your kids to school are three big questions that most people probably struggle with. So too much house, too much car, and maybe an education that is unaffordable. So private schooling, if that's not in the budget, then, is it causing unnecessary stress? Do you really need 4 cars when there's only 2 of you? And do you need to live in a $3 million home, or would you be happy with a $2 million home? Those are big decisions which will either cause you a really happy financial life or a really miserable one.
Look, that is true, and it comes down to where your priorities sit. Is it about utility, or is it about status, or is it a little bit of both, or that scale that can go up? You could have a house that's say on a 5 out of 5 for status, or it could be a 1 out of 5 for utility, and you can move up or down that scale depending on your decision making.
Yeah.
The school fees side of it is an interesting one. I see that firsthand a lot, and I see parents that are literally working themselves into the ground to be able to sustain private school fees for their kids.
My parents admittedly went through that. And
what's the marginal benefit? Okay, your kids go to a different school. They've got a networking opportunity, perhaps when they're older. Their prospects of getting into uni are possibly higher because there's more counselling and guidance as to, what further and higher education look like. So they're all big positives as far as that's concerned. The flip side, and again, this is quite a confronting thing to say, but if you've got to run yourself into the ground to be able to afford your kids' school fees, chances are you're spending less time with your kids as well because you're working more. And as a parent, and that's something I am very qualified on speaking as a parent, you can't outsource bringing your kids up. It's not the school's responsibility to bring your kids up. It's your responsibility as a parent. You can't outsource that. And the only way to be involved with that is time spent with your kids. And if you can't spend the time with your kids because you've got to work more to cover those fees, also see on the other side of the equation with that, when people have kind of ponied up and they've got their kids in a school where they're paying the fees and they're stretching themselves to get there, they want to wring absolutely the last drops of everything out of that. So everything is just 100% about school, and it's the school's got a fete, the school's got a barbecue, the school's got parents come in to read, the school's got whatever it might be, and it becomes your life, and it's only a small slither of your life. It's your kids' education, which, don't get me wrong, is important, but it's only a portion of it. And there are many, many things that perhaps you could recycle that time to do that would be more efficient for you and your family long term than getting caught up into that vortex.
I get it. I, for the first 20 years of my life, never spent one single Sunday with my mum. She worked every single Sunday because it was too expensive to employ staff on a Sunday. So I get that. As to whether or not it was worth it, if you ask her, she'd say it's worth every cent because I love my darling boy Mitch and all that kind of thing. Do I wish I spent more time with my mum? Of course.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you don't get time back. And look, there's absolutely zero judgment. We've all got to do what we've got to do in our life. And I look at when I was younger, the amount of time I was away, but at the time I didn't have a family either. So it was really down to me and what I was depriving myself of at home versus my kids having to pay that penalty. And even now, if we're doing something and, there's firsthand, I will get back at the earliest opportunity I can.
Yep.
So I'm not spending any more than the absolute bare minimum away from my family, because that's a value for me and it's what I choose to do. But yeah, it's easy. School fees, that's a killer. And look, let's just put it out there. Maybe I should be standing for policy. School fees should be tax deductible, because ultimately you pay your income tax probably at a high level to pay for a state school that your kids are never going to go to, but you've put your fair share in anyway, and then you've chosen to pay more money on top of that for private schooling. So you should get some form of concession, because you're putting less strain on the government-funded system, even though you're paying for it. That's my pitch for election. How about that? But yeah, it's a tough one, and it's not just the school fees either, because then you got the excursions, uniforms, accessories, and all the other drama that goes alongside it, and it becomes that is one place I see huge lifestyle inflation. I know we spent quite a lot of time talking about this. You could pick that up, put it into a different lane. It could be about you working at a different company, so you go to a different gym that's more expensive, because that's what all the peer group do. Just the same way, if you find yourself going to a decent school, we've got the mum's lunch or the dad's dinner, and all of a sudden you're going out for dinner with a bunch of people that you're obligated to go to at a restaurant you don't particularly want to go to. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg, and you've got to be seen to be, it's a smoke and mirrors. It really is for a lot of people.
We're a little bit off topic here, but if we bring it back to really what we're speaking
about what we need to be.
Bring it back about what we're speaking about. Let's face it, all we're really talking about here is not overclubbing it.
Oh, too right.
Because it just causes more stress. So I guess the message is quite clear, is where you can be happy is where you need to be, not anywhere else.
That's right. Here you go, okay, we make more money, we need a bigger house. We should have a nicer house, nicer street, nearer the beach, nearer the main river, whatever it might be, more acreage. And now you've got a higher mortgage. So you've worked really hard to get yourself deeper into debt to have something you're not really going to get to enjoy, because you're off working to try and pay for your mortgage. Yep. So you're on the hamster wheel, and it's not the place to be.
That's it. Do you really need a bigger house? Probably not. Interesting one. This could almost be a whole podcast,
We might come back to that.
Yeah, philosophical chats with AB and Mitch.
We could, I reckon,
the good-fashioned couch.
Yeah, it could be controversy and opinion. How do you see this? And you just listen to that sort of monologue I've just been on. You go, you're anti-private. I'm not anti-private school at all. I'm anti-making sure that you don't find yourself in financial distress.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think we both veer between being guilty of lifestyle inflation and being dead against it. Depends what areas of our life we're prepared to accept or not.
My goodness, where's that couch? We
complex characters, right?
Complex, very complex. Moving on.
Point number 4. You want to be financially free, retire your debt. This is an obvious one, but it sort of bleeds into the conversation we've just had. You're never going to feel free if you still owe someone something.
That's quite correct. That was always my old chap's philosophy, and still is to this day. Don't owe anyone anything, I own me. And that's just his sort of little mantra for life, which is a great one. So this notion of, again, overclubbing it and trying to over-accelerate where you're at. So property is a very easy example to fall into with this, where you buy your first property, it goes well, there's some equity, you strip it out, you buy your second, refinance, third, fourth, and so on. The challenge is that what you could be doing is, number one, building a house of cards where there's no real cash in it. It's a shell. It's been sort of scalloped out, and should things go the wrong way, where you see a pullback in the market, you might find yourself in a situation where you've got negative equity and you've got to try and unravel it, which is next to impossible. Very, very difficult thing to do. And that's where you've gone hard too quickly. At the same time, refinancing is a tried and tested strategy for many people. And I guess it's been supported by the 25-year bull run that we've had in Australian property prices. So you've had conducive conditions to that, which can, of course, change. The challenge then, as you become closer to the retirement line, whatever that may look like for you, is that if you've got debt on your properties, they're not producing any income. They're just self-funding, or maybe not quite self-funding, and there are holding costs with them. So that notion that, okay, I want to get to retirement and I want to be able to do stuff, well, the first thing you have to do, yes, is retire your debt. So that may be, if you've still got a mortgage on your primary place of residence, you've got to get that eliminated. If you've got debt in your property portfolio, it might be that you have to cash out of one or two properties, and what equity you've got there used to pay down the debt on the others, so that they become debt-free, unencumbered properties that can pay you an income.
Yeah, I think that is the absolute play. I think at some point in your life, you've got to make that decision where you're happy with what you've got, whether it be a real asset or an investment property or both, or whatever it might be, and get the debt paid down, because as soon as that's paid off, you have escaped the matrix, just like your father did in that 7-year period.
Well, if I go back, and not wishing to go back to a point 2 or 3 points ago and going on another tangent, but that notion of, if you're able to buy something, does it make you feel good, or you do this, does it make you end up where you need to be? ultimately, your focus is really simple. Do you focus on that which you have or that which you don't have? And my wife is probably one of the best grounders for me in this space, because she's all about gratitude. We're grateful that we've got a healthy family, which is the most important thing. And we had a near miss earlier in the year with one of them, which is quite sobering. And you look at all the different things that you're blessed to be able to do as a family, because you've got time, you've got your health, you've got resources that can fund it, all of those different things. And she's constantly ribbing me about, why are you focused on what you don't have? You've got everything you could. When you were a kid,
what else don't you have?
What don't you have now that when you were a kid you want? You've got multiples of everything and more that you wanted when you were a kid.
True.
So why are you focused on what you don't have? Why can't you be content and happy with that which you do? And that's a really sobering question. You have what you have, you get to the finish line, you make it work. So if you go into retirement and you've got $1 million in your super, fantastic. Well, you can plan your retirement out based on what you have. You don't have more. You've got to make that work. If you come into retirement and you've got 600,000 in your super, well, that's what you've got to make work, and you've got to shuffle the pieces around to make that happen. It may be that you work part-time for a period of time. It may well be that's what you end up having to do, but that's what it is. Our goal is, through this conversation right now, in this moment that you're listening to this as someone that's consuming this podcast, is to make a decision today to ensure that whatever that thing is that you have when it's time to retire is what you need.
Interesting.
Not necessarily what you want, but what you need.
That's it. Retire your debt.
Got to retire your debt. You can do anything as long as you've got debt. And you can then unpack that in a lot of different levels too. If you're someone that has a business, for example, and maybe you're looking to sell it, you're looking to wind it up, one of the things that no one wants to look at are all the intercompany loans and directors' drawings and bits and pieces that you perhaps have pulled out over the years. Division 7A, if you're on a company, you know what I'm talking about, where you've taken a loan and you've got to pay it back. And all this different stuff. And we'll write that off, we'll do this, we'll clean that out. There's a lot of stuff that you can do within there over time. But in just the same way that you've got to retire your debt, if you've an investment portfolio, for example, you've got to clean your business up as well, because nothing is set in stone. Nothing's yours until that's all squared up and cleaned up. So again, getting good advice on what you're doing over the years leading up to retirement is key. Different type of debt to have to retire, but it's one that if you've got director's loans, you've very seriously got to think about.
Yep. Okay, last but not least, financially free, save for a rainy day. Have cash at the bank, be able to pay your bills, have an emergency fund. And as we've mentioned previously on prior podcasts as well, have accounts for certain things, a holiday account, a new kitchen account. That way you're not flustering for everything. You can just dip into what you need.
Yep. Well, very true. And my father's 83. He'll be 84 in February, and he retired when he was 57, and he's still saving. So he's all about saving your money for a rainy day. And if you've prepped, a rainy day is not a problem. Just in the same way that, if you've taken the time to think, okay, well, I'm going somewhere, I'm going to Melbourne on Thursday.
Yep.
What's the weather forecast? That's a tricky one with Melbourne because it can change, as we all know.
Yeah.
But, it's supposed to be raining. Okay, well, I better pack a wetproof coat or an umbrella. So you've seen what it is in the future. You've taken an action step today to make sure that you're prepared for whatever that might be in the future. And look, if it doesn't rain, it's no big deal. You stay dry if it does, though. And that's the key thing when it comes to money. You've got to look ahead at what the forecast is and take the necessary steps today to ensure that what you have to work with is what's needed for what that forecast is suggesting you're going to need.
That's
different way to look at it. And saving for a rainy day doesn't sound much fun, but don't save, invest for a rainy day. Let's think about someone that 4 years ago decided that, okay, the Aussie property market's run its course, and you bought your two-bedder in New Farm for, $800,000. Now it's worth 1.4. So that's 600,000 you would never have gotten, not to mention the rent that probably paid for it through that period of time.
Yep.
That you would have never gotten holding it in cash, trying to just keep it safe, keep it in cash. Alternatively, the same 4 years ago, you could have bought your shares in Netflix for $170 a share. They're now sitting at $1,300 a share. Save your money for a rainy day, invest for a rainy day, same outcome. You're prepared for what you need into the future, and it starts today in the immediacy of this broadcast. And look, I'm sort of thinking we've had quite a weavy kind of podcast with a lot of personal stuff in there.
Raw and honest, right?
And I think what it does more than anything is reflect not how psychologically imbalanced we are, but reflects just how complicated we are as human beings.
Yeah.
Insofar as we have immediate needs, we have immediate wants, we've got long-term plans and long-term goals. Sometimes they're consistently aligned, sometimes they're not. And it's how you steward yourself through that journey to ensure that you can have some color, you can be happy where you're at and what you're doing, but at the same time, you're also making sure that you're taking care of business down the line to ensure that that feeling of well-being or security or contentment or an ability to have latitude of choice as to what you do when you do it, you can continue to have not just through this chapter of your life, but forever. And the only ways to achieve that is, number one, budget. Spend less than you earn. Number two, with the surplus cash, get it investing. Number three, make sure you've got a good idea of what the forecast looks like for where you're going so that you can be best prepared to handle it. And it really is as simple as that. And the quirky human nature juxtaposition of personalities that you and I bring to the table is probably something that most people have on one level, shape, or form. That's the stuff you got to move aside. You got to understand it, but then move it to the side and say, that's not going to derail my game plan, because this is ultimately where I know the forecast needs to be, and this is what I need to do today to get there. And it means today to get there, not tomorrow getting around to it, but actually today in the moment.
You know what I think makes this so interesting, if I can close this off, is we talk about being financially free, but what financially free is to everyone is different. I think the steps to get to that are all the same, which is what we've covered today. But whatever that nirvana of whatever it is we're all chasing is different for everyone. Hence why we've gone on so many tangents today. But a great conversation nonetheless. Thank you, AB.
It's a strange one. I'm going to go back on the couch, I think.
Thanks.
Cheers. There you have it, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit the notification button. We'll look forward to hosting you next week.